Facebook page. This is Brian Foster on May 17th, 2020, Sunday night. We come to you 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific, all time zones in between, time zones around the world every Sunday. It may differ a little bit on the time if it's daylight saving times or not, depending where I am at, but we are here. And today we're talking on chapter 22 on the gospel according to Spiritism. It's all about marriage and divorce and what Allan Kardec said about, the quotes by Jesus in the Bible about marriage and couples. So I think you'd find this very interesting. First, please share this on other Facebook posts. And then if you're listening to this on YouTube, because I post everything after I do live on Kardec Radio, please join Kardec Radio on Facebook. If you're listening to it on YouTube or BitChute, please subscribe, hit the like button, and give me a comment. See what you like, what you want to talk about next. And I see we already have some people coming up. Hello. So anyway, I want to welcome everybody aboard. And today, let's get into it. We're going to talk about the gospel according to Spiritism. We've been going through this chapter by chapter, and it is interesting. So this is chapter 22, and the chapter is titled, Whom God Has Joined Together, Let No Man Put Apart. And this is, many, Christian, Catholic, Protestants, many people always said, no, you can't divorce. And of course, it's changed, and it's been, I think that way into Ireland for me, just I think recently, I think you couldn't have a divorce. So I forgot when, someone can correct me on the comments. But this is something that Allan Kardec wrote about. And of course, in the 1850s, when he wrote this book, he codified Spiritism from Answers from Spirits, from different mediums, different geographical location. And he did this book by using the quotes from the Bible and his interpretation. He also added interpretations by other spirits as he had these different meetings. So he talked about, first, he used this quote from the Bible on Matthew chapter 19, verses 3 to 9. The Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, saying unto him, Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause? And he answered and said unto them, Have ye not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, For this cause shall a man leave father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall twain to be one flesh. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. They say unto him, Why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and to put her away? And he said unto them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, suffered you to put away your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. And I say unto you, whosoever put away his wife, except it to be for fornication, and shall marry another, committeth adultery, and who marrieth her which is put away doth commit adultery. So this is what Allan Kardec wrote about this. And this has been, a bone of contention for many Christians for, many decades, hundreds of years, a couple thousands of years. This is what he wrote. The only things which are immutable are those which stem from God. Everything which is the work of man is subject to change. The laws of nature are the same at all times and in all countries. Human laws change according to the times, places, and intellectual progress. In marriage, what is of a divine order is the union of sexes, so that the substitution of those who die may be put into effect. But the conditions which regulate this union are so human in design that in the whole world there are not, even in Christendom, two countries where these laws are exactly identical, and none where in the course of time they do not suffer changes. The result of this is that according to civil law, what is legitimate in one country at a certain time is considered to be adultery in another country at another time. This is due to the fact that civil law has at its objective the regulation of the interests of families, interests which vary according to customs and local necessities. In this manner, for example, in certain countries, a religious marriage is the only legitimate one. In others, it is also necessary to have a civil marriage. And finally, there are yet other places where a civil marriage is sufficient on its own. Then he goes on further. So he's giving kind of the whole context, right? There's different laws in different countries. No one agrees exactly. Then he carries on. But in the union of the sexes, apart from the divine material law common to all living creatures, there is another divine law which is immutable, as are all of God's law, one that is exclusively moral, which is the law of love. God wishes all beings to unite themselves not only through the ties of the flesh, but also through those of the soul, so that the mutual affection of the spouses be transmitted to the offspring, and that it should be two, and not just one, who love them, look after them, and help them progress. Is the law of love taken into consideration in ordinary conditions within marriage? Not in the least, Allan Kardec says. The mutual sentiments of two beings who are attracted one to the other are not consulted, since in the majority of cases the sentiment is severed. What is looked for is not the satisfaction of the heart, but that of pride, vanity, and cupidity. In a word, all material interests. When everything goes well according to these interests, it is said to be a marriage of convenience. When the pockets are well lined, it is said that the spouses are equally harmonized and should be very happy. However, as he continue to quote, however, no civil laws, nor the obligation which these laws determine, can replace the law of love. If this does not preside over the union, it frequently happens that those who were forcibly united separate themselves. The oath sworn at the foot of the altar, when pronounced as a banal formula, then becomes a perjury. For that reason, we have unhappy marriages which end up becoming criminal, which is a double disgrace that could have been avoided if, on establishing the conditions for that marriage, the law of love, which is the only law sanctioning a union in the eyes of God, have not been abstracted. When God said, and they twain shall be one flesh, and when Jesus said, what God hath joined together, let no man put asunder, these words should be understood as reference to the union according to God's immutable law and not according to the mutable laws of man. So, and this is probably as far as you could go. Now, also remember that the spirit world tells us that the spirits talk to us in considering the language and the culture and the technology level of who it talks to in the human condition at what time it talks to them. So during Jesus's time, it talked about, marriage and, between a man and a woman. And then in Allan Kardec's time, it says a marriage is between two spirits. Didn't say if they're a man and a woman. It also said later a spirit could come back as a man or a woman. So, and then Allan Kardec here, even in the Gospel according to Spiritism, says he's really talking about a union of love, and not a union of the white heat of passion. And people get married, and then of course they when that passion goes away, then no one in the spirit world wants two unhappy people being together. They want two people who love together to support each other and to take care and to understand each other. Because remember, we, as we go through life after life, we will come back as different sexes. And that's what marriage is really a lot of part, is the fact that we learn from the opposite sex or the opposite type of person. The man being more aggressive and the woman a bit more passive, and then you have to look at the aggressive and passive part of the man and the aggressive and passive part of the woman, or two women, two men, however it works within your union, as long as you learn from that other person and you help that other person. So it's a give and take. So the main thing is what Allan Kardec is expressing is love. Now let's talk about that. How much should we love? So there is a good scene in the book Liberation. And Liberation was psychographed by Chico Xavier, of course, with our beloved spirit author Andre Louise, was impressed by the work of a medium, and her name was Donna Isara Silva. And when she was working, she displayed beautiful radiations. And after she finished the session, she was surrounded by a gray substance. And Andre goes, well, how could she change so quickly? She was just so immaculate and beautiful when she was, medium. But now she's, all this, this kind of dark emotion, which, causes this dark gray substance around her, is coming out. So his team leader says, the poor thing is caught up in a veritable tempest of malignant fluids sent by low-order spirits, whom she has, inadvertently tuned into through the dark wires of jealousy. As long as she is under our direct influence, particularly during spiritual endeavors of a collective nature, in which she acts as a receiving valve for the assistant's energies, she is happy and in a good mood. A medium is always a source that both gives and receives during his or her work involving the two realms. When Asora's work ends, however, she falls back into her unfortunate condition. So, what she said, well, Asora is a wonderful medium, but she allowed herself to be guided by a base emotion. She let jealousy permeate her being. So much so, when she sleeps, she immediately goes out and searches for low spirits who encourage her in her low passions. And Andre goes, well, is there anything we can do to help her? And then this is what he's told. Our sister is a precious co-worker with appreciable and invaluable qualities, but she has not let go of her jealousy regarding her husband. It is through that breach that violet vibrations of anger get in, causing her to lose excellent opportunities to serve and grow spiritually. Today, she had one of her worst days, completely handling herself over to such inner flagellation. She needs our help tonight because whenever a servant, awakened to the good, endures a wave of inferior vibrations throughout the day, he or she is setting up a visit with the beings and forces that populate the night. So, what is she telling us? It's very important to control your emotions when you're dealing with your significant other. If you lose your temper or you dwell on negative thoughts, you're opening yourself up to bad influences. And the hole you're digging will have many inferior spirits helping you to dig it deeper. Now, let's go into another example. This is about Alfred and Ismailia. So there are even soulmates. And these two were definitely soulmates, right? And they've even failed while on Earth. And I tell you about this story. This is in the book The Messengers, again by Andre Louise, psychographed by Chico Xavier. And the story of Alfred and Ismailia is somewhat about their lives, but it's also about their life in the spirit world after their incarnated lives. And this story that was brought to us by Andre Louise illustrates that true love survives many trials and separations, and that if a couple are bonded together, no one deed, neither life nor death, keeps them apart for long. So, in the book, The Messengers, there's a spirit named Alfred who talks to Andre Louise, and he tells how when he was incarnated, he was a successful businessman. He threw himself into his business dealings and was quite wealthy. His negotiations and the running of his business was intense, which kept him away from his wife, Ismailia, and his children. And he goes on to tell the crux of the story. He said that Ismailia was the stronghold of my neglected family. Virtue, however, can always be tormented by vice, and I let my wife be sexually harassed by a disloyal friend, someone with whom I shared extensive business interests. Ismailia suffered in silence for years, until he finally realized he was getting nowhere with his immoral propositions. So, the crux of the story is Alfred's business partner tried to persuade him that women in general weren't trustworthy. So he's trying to make Alfred reject his wife. And then slowly Alfred's friends are saying, oh, Ismailia, who knows what she's doing, right? And the constant drone of the possibilities of Ismailia's unfaithfulness started to wear Alfred down. Then he would watch the smallest detail in everything Ismailia did and he'd analyze her behavior and actions for clues. And of course, if you want to find reasons to think someone is not doing very well, you will. And he thinks, she must be guilty. So Ismailia, knowing Alfred's friendship for his business partner, she never revealed the story of the unwanted sexual advances. So as usual in these cases, when there is a complete breakdown of communication, Alfred became worse around the house. He'd be mean all the time, and she just kind of responded in silence, hoping that, he would grow out of it. So then Alfred tells of his partner's next deed. So he said, finally, still not pleased with his results, my business associate hired a stranger to invade our home and remain in hiding in the room next door to our bedroom. I noticed something out of the ordinary, burst into the bedroom like a madman. Ismailia, who had been lying in bed, begged me to calm down while I tore the room apart, looking for her supposed lover. Suddenly I saw the shadow of the stranger, who fled from the room next door, out the window and into the garden, without my having been able to get hold of him. I ran behind him with a gun, shooting in different directions, but did not hit him, thank heavens. So Alfred finally released all his pent-up anger for many months. He's thought of killing Ismailia, but something stopped him from pulling the trigger. It was probably, his spirit guard saying, no, don't do that. You'll really be repentant for that one. But he did the next cruelest action. It's very cruel. He arranged to take complete custody of the children, and he sent Ismailia back to her parents' farm. And she was not allowed to see the parents again. This was the time back in Brazil, during those days. And Alfred went alone to Europe to recover from his discovery. He arranged for the children to be taken care of by a governess. He made no attempt to find out the truth or get in touch with Ismailia. He spent 2 years in Europe, and Alfred was in France when he received a letter that after her complete abandonment, his wife fell ill and died of tuberculosis. So think about how tragic our actions are when we do not possess the capacity to love unconditionally. Spiritism teaches us that we all have, at one time or another, played the victim, and we've also played the betrayer. None of us are undeserving of sympathy. Now, Alfred spent many years, came back from Europe, concentrating on his business and his children. He tried to repress the past and forget all that happened. Until one day, years went by. I'll quote from him. Excuse me. Years went by until one day I was summoned to the home of my old business associate, who was on his deathbed. Then and there he confessed what he had done, how he had harassed Ismailia and tricked me. He begged for my forgiveness, but I couldn't give it. I was devastated. This confession hit me hard. From that day on, my life was that of a madman. I tried somehow to amend the effects of my wrongdoing by explaining the facts to Ismailia's parents. After some time, I returned to the spiritual world, laden with guilt, in very poor spiritual condition. So after his death, Alfred spent time wandering around aimlessly in the lower zone, not a pleasant place. And that's the place between the celestial cities where spirits who ascend, who are free of the material passions and understand the love of God, and the depths where those who lack spirituality or have criminal tendencies gather, of course, for only as long as each one of them desires. Hence, many are in the lower zones, those who are not cruel, but so preoccupied by their leftover earthly worries, are never considered the possibility of an afterlife. They are unable to look up and see the plan for perfection before their very eyes. Now, Alfred was finally rescued from a sojourn in the world in the middle of heaven and hell. This is what he said. Needless to say, and amazingly, I soon saw myself protected by Ismailia. Unfortunately for me, there's a wide void between Ismailia and myself. She follows my steps closely, but is a dweller of higher planes, which I still work hard to enter into. So for a long time, I've been dedicating my efforts to assist the unenlightened and the sufferers who come to this outpost. Alfred is working in an outpost in the umbral, the lower zone, where they help spirits who have wandering there come in there, get better, and so they can go up to one of the levels of heaven. And he says Ismailia comes to him once a month to help him out. And so this is what Alfred knows. So then Andre asks Alfred, why couldn't Ismailia just come down and help him all the time? And Alfred tells Andre that his and Ismailia's superior spirit guides recommended that Alfred first rightly learn to appreciate what God has given him and to not thrust aside it so easily. And Alfred tells Andre, this is a quote from Alfred, I am the one who must learn how to elevate myself. And it's for that reason that we haven't had permission to remain together yet. I am paying the right price for my hastiness because of my impulsiveness. I lost my inner peace, my home, and my wonderful wife. I did not kill, I did not steal, but I feel as if I poisoned myself. Slander is an invisible monster which spreads poison through undiscerning ears and eyes. How true that is. So think of this. And we've seen this before. You know, Alfred will achieve his goal with the help of his true love, Ismailia. And I've read, men and women coming back and forth. And of course, other groups of people, men helping other men, women helping other women with, true love of helping one spirit or another get out of the umbral or the lower zone, it's also called in English, or whatever circumstance they are to come up. Many times when someone's first in the lower zone, they can't see the spirits around them helping them because they are less dense, more energy than matter than the person in the lower zone, and they can't even detect them. Just like we, who are very dense and mostly matter, can't detect the plane of the lower zone all around us because we are surrounded by spirits. So Ismailia is helping him, and by his hard work and dedication, he shall advance in the spiritual quest. Now that is true love, and he will be reunited once again with Ismailia. Really, he's very smart. He's not rushing his rehabilitation. He's calmly building a solid foundation to be a proper partner for his wife. What Alfred did, any of us really are capable of doing. Life in our physical body, with its close connections to swirling emotions and bad advice from practically everyone, is challenging. Thankfully, the spirit realm realizes the odds against us and allows us many lives to get it right. Our spirits, benefactors, are patient and wise, and if one lesson doesn't suffice, another will be planned with different aspects to the trial to take into account our hard-headedness and poor usage of our free will. So probably what will happen in the future, they'll be married again, and again, most probably, Alfred will be, given slander against his wife another time, and hopefully he will have learned his lesson. Because they are probably soulmates, because if that's true love, Ismailia, even after she died, couldn't see her children, died of tuberculosis, and still loved him. What a wonderful woman. So, but being married isn't easy, even to your soulmate. I know that. I'm married to my soulmate, and it's not easy sometimes. And while two are in a marriage together, this doesn't mean both will experience the same trials and tribulations. After all, each has passed certain classes and others have been failed. Everyone's different. In fact, even though, I'll talk about soulmates for a second, in the books by the Reverend G. Owen, in the book Heaven and Below, they talk about twin spirits. Spirits who are actually melded into one, who are two spirits, but now they've merged into a man and woman, into one personality or character. I don't know. They don't say much about this and how it actually works. And can they divide again? Or do they go through and become one character and personality as they rise up? I don't know. It's very interesting. I believe there are so many different life forms and levels of life forms. They also talk about, they talk about higher spirits. They also talk about more automaton type spirits who don't have as much free will and intelligence as we do in the spirit world, but they do very important jobs. So There's just must be so much in there. Of course, I review a lot of that in my book, Heaven and Below, Spirits in the Spirit Universe and How We Are Guided by Spirits. So let's talk about working together. So we are told, and this is a wonderful book, Spiritual Wisdoms, Mists of Hope. And this is what they tell us in this book. Clearly, we all have profound attachments, frustrations, idiosyncrasies, and difficulties. Reincarnation unquestionably apprises us of all of them. Let me get a drink real quick. And when it indicates the directions those aspects should take within the familial setting in accordance with the mechanism of life that terrestrial experience motivates us to readjust. For this reason, every couple and every domestic organization expose sensitive areas of interconnected problems that we must know how to avoid or address for the future to bring us solutions of irrevocable harmony. So a key takeaway in the passage is the word avoid. Avoid some personality trait or something from your partner. Now, many of us, I know, I do, would like to change certain aspects about our beloved spouse. But we must recognize that they may not be able to tackle that particular problem. Knowing that we have an eternity to rebuild ourselves should allow a greater forbearance for traits which we may not find attractive. Letting it go until the next life may be a sound strategy in many circumstances. And the point is emphasized in the next paragraph, dictated by Emmanuel to Chico Xavier. That's what he says. If you are next to someone under the responsibility of affection, do not demand from your companion the immediate presentation of the resources that, according to your personal views, the other would need to become the perfect company in the domestic environment. Neither expect your companion to reason in accordance with your own thoughts, for it is not licit to anyone to expect from others that which one cannot yet perform oneself. If you do not want to have cast on your shoulders the imposition of a companion who, like you, have embraced responsibilities of a union of two, it is only fair that you should not impose yourself on the other by placing your own head on the shoulders of your spouse to whom you promise care and dedication. So that's a little deviation from the chapter about marriage, and it's from the books by Chico Xavier, and of course some by Emmanuel and some by Andre Luis, which are wonderful reads, and I recommend that to everyone. So it's not an easy thing, and so therefore, one thing to remember is we are all human, and as human, we are imperfect, and therefore, your marriage may be a trial where you go through a marriage and it's destined to end badly. And so and it may even be better as far as if you fight, it may even be better for the children that you try to gracefully exit. And one of the things I try and tell people who ask me about this thing is if you want to get a divorce, try and act honorably as possible, even if your spouse does not. If they want to cheat you and stuff like that, just fine. Let them. You don't have to worry about revenge. That they will learn that lesson in later lives. But for all, just try and be calm and cool, and especially for the children, don't ever use the children as any wedge between the marriages, and don't say bad things about your ex. Try and handle it honorably, and understand that the soul you were with tried to deliver a lesson. It was most probably 99.99% certain that was destined. You're destined to marry that person, and you were destined to learn some hard truths, most probably if the marriage failed. I know I did in my past. So it's very important, though, to try and act honorably, and I know it is not easy. Now let's get back to Allan Kardec. So he goes on to talk about marriage. And he says this civil law then unneeded. And so we go back to matrimony according to nature. And he says, certainly not. Civil law has the object of regulating social relationships and families. So there he's saying, yes, we still needed civil law and we need to live together. But these are all civil. And the same thing, they even asked in the Spirit's book later, says, what about divorce? And the Spirit said, look, that's your human law. That can change. That is not God's immutable divine law. So when people come together or not come together, what is a divine law is love. And that's what Allan Kardec says over and over again, is even if you don't want to live together anymore, try and do it with love and as much as possible. And so even then Allan Kardec talks about divorce. He says divorce is a man-made law whose objective is to legally separate those who are in fact already separated. It's not against God's law, since it only reforms what men have done and is only applicable in cases in which the divine law was not taken into account. If it was contrary to God's law, the church itself would be forced to consider as betrayers of trust those of its heads who, by their authority and in the name of religion, have imposed it on more than one occasion. In these cases, it would have been a double betrayal. Even Jesus did not sanction the absolute indissolubility of marriage. Did he not say it was because of the hardness of your hearts that Moses permitted you to repudiate your women? This signifies that ever since the time of Moses, I'm quoting, when mutual affection is not the only motive for matrimony, separation could become necessary. Nevertheless, he added, in the beginning it was not like that. Meaning that at the origin of humanity, when men were not yet perverted by selfishness and pride, and lived according to God's law, the unions were derived from sympathy and not ambition or vanity. Therefore, there was no desire to repudiate. Jesus goes even further because he specifies a case in which the repudiation is justified, that of adultery. Well, adultery cannot exist where there is sincere reciprocated affection. It is true that he prohibited a man to marry a repudiated woman, but here we must take into consideration the customs and character of men in those times, when the Mosaic law prescribed stoning to death. When wishing to abolish one barbaric custom, it was necessary to find a substitute penalty, and he found it in the disgrace which would come from the prohibition of a second marriage. It was to a certain extent one civil law being substituted by another, but like all laws of nature, it had to pass the test of time. So again, as we hear so many times, from spirits telling us, the passages in the Bible, right? Jesus in the New Testament said what he could without losing the audience, right? Without the people turning. If he had said, no, it's okay to divorce, you can separate. Like if you're not getting together anymore, you can separate. No, that was not in the cards. That they would not have listened. Just like they would not have listened, saying, you should love everybody. If homosexuality, as long as you love each other, that's all that matters. He could not say that. They would have just been rejected out of hand, and he had to get the majority of his message across. And that's why the spirits tell us over and over again that the messages of love, charity, and fraternalism is eternal in the Old and the New Testament. Everything else, that's for you to decide. And that's why it's very important to separate the two. And that's what Spiritism brings us. Spiritism brings us, it's a dynamic messages from the spirit realm. There's not, maybe there's just the Old Testament or just the New Testament. And some spirits say, there's just a spirit's book. That's all I need. Allan Kardec wrote. No, Allan Kardec would not even agree with that. Spiritism tells us the spirits will tell us more and more. They'll communicate with us and give us more information as we become more advanced and technologically and culturally able to handle it. What the spirits told Allan Kardec, they've told more to Chico Xavier. They told more to Jiva Owen. They told him about higher levels of heaven. They told him, different vibrational, harmonial things. There's a lot more that's been revealed about heaven to Chico, to Jiva Owen, to Yvonne Piera, to Waldo Franco, who's still alive, is being, as the book sees, psychographing reveals more and more to us. So it's not a static thing. I mean, Emmanuel, 1954, in this book On the Way to the Light, talks about how humankind was, guided from the start. Manual, another preface of a book, The Domains of Mediumship, tells us how we all have a unique identifier in our mind. So when our thoughts go out and they're tagged, just like your cell phone, right? Your cell phone has a unique identifier. And so when you make a call, it knows who you're going to call, who the call came from, where you are geographically, so it knows what tower to talk to, right? It knows all those things. It knows what operating. Are you on Apple? Are you on Android? Or whatever. Our thoughts are tagged probably much more complex. Because when you look at NDEs and people look at their life reviews, and there's also been talked about even by Emanuel Swedenborg, where he was a witness at life reviews, they can replay the person who had their near-death experience, what that person was thinking, and the people around them, they can replay what they were thinking too, and feeling, and speaking, of course. So therefore, it means that there's this huge database that measures everything. Now think about it. There's 7 billion people, on this planet. There's 22 billion, approximately, according to Geraldo Dutra Diaz, in the spirit planes around the earth, incarnates and discarnates. Now think how many thoughts we have all the time, just constantly, all the time. That's all being recorded. And therefore they know what we're thinking. And they also know that when we get into a relationship, is how hard it is to maintain that relationship given the emotional turmoil we have. And that's why it's important that we try and be honorable and truthful to whoever we're dealing with. And I know that's not easy. And I also know that if you are trying to be honorable and truthful and the other person's not, there's this overriding emotion to, want a little bit of payback. But that's something, that's why it's important to study Spiritism and look at that opposite person as a work in progress. And look at that person who, let's say, made your life miserable for a certain amount of time as someone was an actor in a play that was sent to you to elicit certain stimuli to make your emotions grow. Now you may think, it's all negative. I was pissed all the time. Well, hopefully you learned how those things not to make you mad all the time and to understand what that person did to me, I won't do to anybody else. Because most probably what they did to you, I have news for you, you probably did to somebody else in a past life, something similar and probably worse, because the way the spirit realm works is when you've done something bad to somebody, very bad, let's say, I'll give you an example. Camilo Branco in the book Memoirs of a Suicide. When he was older, and I think around at the end of the 19th century, he committed suicide because he was going blind because of syphilis. Now, in a previous life, so he was sentenced to be blind for a while, right? Probably not too long because he was in his 60s, I think, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that. But he was sentenced to be blind. But what did he do in a previous life to deserve to be blind? Well, he actually tortured people and he blinded them with red hot pokers. He didn't have that done to him. He was given a very benign trial. Hey, okay, you're going to blind someone. This is what it feels like. Another example. In the same book, a friend of Camilo Branco was understanding and looking at this thing, going over his past life. And he had committed suicide because he had throat cancer and he didn't have he worked at a bank and he didn't have enough money to get some sort of diagnostic and possible cure. So he embezzled money from the bank. He was caught and therefore he killed himself, left his wife and children. So why did he have to have throat cancer? Well, in a previous life, he actually cut out the tongue of a slave who called him out when he raped his young daughter. And of course, he tortured that slave. So again, that was not, horrible response. So therefore, I hope it gives you a realization that the spirit world doesn't punish us. Because, if you want to be punished for blinding someone with red hot poker, well, okay, you blind them with a red hot poker. That's not what happened. You say, this is what happens when you're blind. You don't want that to happen to anybody else, do you? And you should say in your mind, no, I don't. It's not a good state. I don't want that to happen. So these, the lessons are subtle. Now, I will say, if one is stubborn and says, and the next, and you're still like, no, I still want to torture people. Well, the next lesson will be less subtle. So that's why you will see this, seemingly chaos on earth. Well, where people who seem like you are nice, wonderful people, some bad things happen to them. And they could be wonderful, nice people. And they're probably wonderful, nice people at their current life. But in their previous life, they had done some bad actions. Therefore, that's why, and when you look at your spouse, think the same thing. This person, acting really bad right now, but in the future, they'll act much better. They'll learn. And their frustration, and at a point where they were sent as a lesson to you, you were probably sent as some sort of lesson to them too. And so they're like an actor in a play that you and they are both acting a part where you're both learning from each other. Now, hopefully a marriage or a relationship, whatever you have together, is one where you can support each other and learn and then be patient. And that's very important. And, and hopefully it happens in the majority, but I know a lot of times it doesn't. But, you go through life and you learn. And that's what the spirits want us. They don't expect us to stay in a bad marriage where everyone is miserable. They expect us, if we're going to extricate ourselves, to do it honorably. But they would also like you to try first to make it better and see if that succeeds or not. And if it doesn't, right, but at least give it a good try. That's all they ask. They're not being unreasonable. They're not saying you have to be handcuffed forever to that jerk, right? And try not to think of them as a jerk. Think of them as an immature spirit, something that's not fitting you at this point. And someday they will be a much better person. That's all you can do. So anyway, I want to thank everyone for being with me tonight. And if you would like to know more about Spiritism, first I recommend my 3 books, Heaven and Below, Spirits in the Spirit Universe, and How We Are Guided by Spirits. But you also may like to read The 7 Tenets of Spiritism, How They Impact Your Daily Life. That's more of my own journey of how I found Spiritism and how I saw the signs and signals. And then it helps me to understand, even start recording my dreams and seeing what's happening and understanding when I try and do something, if there is enough, obstacles in my way, it's a hard, first, let me say, it's a hard balance. Is you have to be aggressive and try to get what you want to get, but you also have to make sure your goal is in concert with your conscience. But even that goal may not be the planned goal of the spirit world. And if you keep hitting obstacles and it's not going to work, then you got to do something else. You just can't be passive and wait for some sign and signal. That's no. The spirit world wants us intellectually curious and aggressive in our work ethic, right? And our quest to learn and study. So I kind of talk about all this, what I went through and how I was guided at first completely unknowingly, right? Kind of like a kindergartner shuttled from class to class. They just kind of going along, as cute as buttons. But it's when you really find out how you are guided and shepherded and watched and analyzed and reanalyzed. And it's very interesting. And those around you too. And it gives you a better view of the world and your place in it. Anyway, I want to thank everybody. And I want to say God bless everyone tonight. God bless.